Chapter 4, The Locked Room. 2 days later, there was a storm in the middle of the night. I was hot and I couldn't sleep. I got out of bed, went across to the window, and looked out at the night. Black clouds hurried across the sky, and the trees moved wildly in the wind. The rain made a loud noise on the window. I opened my window and put my head out into the wind and the rain. I looked at the other windows in the house. Most of them were dark, but one window had a light in it. Somebody isn't sleeping, I thought. Which room is that? There were 6 windows between my window and the room with the light. And there are 6 doors between my room and the locked door, I thought. That light is in the locked room. Somebody's in there. I put on my dressing gown and went out of my room. The house was dark, and at first I couldn't see very well. I walked along the passage and turned the corner. There it was, the locked room, and there was a light under the door. I went nearer and heard noises. Somebody's moving about in the locked room, I thought. Who is it? Then the light went off and the door opened. I was afraid to move. Somebody came out of the room and into the dark passage. Lightning suddenly lit up the house, and I saw who it was. It's Mr. Ross, I thought. What was he doing in that room in the middle of the night? I didn't move, and he didn't see me. He locked the door of the room carefully. He didn't put the key in his pocket, but hid it in the plant pot next to the door. He's coming along here, I thought. I must get back to my room. And I ran back along the passage. Mr. Ross heard me. "Who's that?" he called. I didn't answer, but ran into my room and closed the door. He came along the passage and stopped outside my door. Then he walked past and went on down the stairs. I took off my dressing gown and went back to bed. I was shaking because I was afraid. Now I know how to get into the locked room, I thought. But what's in there? There was no storm in the morning, but it was still raining. I got up early and worked on the farm. There were eggs from the chickens, and I put them in boxes. I helped to milk the cows and then took them out to the field. Later, I went back into the house for breakfast. "Did you sleep all right last night?" asked Mrs. Duncan. "Or did the storm wake you up?" "I slept all right," I said. I didn't want to tell her about the light in the locked room or about Mr. Ross. After breakfast, I went back upstairs. Mr. Ross was talking on the telephone in his office. My mother was working at her desk. I knew that Mrs. Duncan was in the kitchen and that Mr. Duncan was working in the garden. Where's Mrs. Ross? I thought. Then I looked out of the window and saw her with Tony Duncan. They were walking to the boat. He's taking her out in the boat, I thought. Perhaps she's going to Edinburgh. The boat moved away from the island and I waited until it was out at sea. Then I opened the door of my room. There was nobody in the passage, and I ran along to the locked room. The key was still in the plant pot, and I took it out. My hand was shaking. Then I unlocked the door. Chapter 5. A Dead Man. I went into the room, and I was very surprised. The room was full of strange things. Coloured shirts and suits. 3 guitars. And there were posters and photographs on the wall. I looked at the posters. Jake Rosso's face looked down at me. I looked at the dead Jake Rosso's picture, and I remembered all the photographs on the walls of my room in Hong Kong. I could never forget that face, the face of my favourite singer. Then, while I looked at his face, something strange happened. I began to see another face in the posters. An older face, and with a moustache, but the same face. I saw the face of Mr. Ross. "No," I said, "it's not true." But it was. I knew it was. Mr. Ross is Jake Rosso. "No," said a voice behind me. I turned round and saw Mr. Ross. He was standing in the doorway. He looked afraid. "I don't believe you," I said. "You have to believe me." I looked at the posters. "Who is that, if it's not you?" "It's Jake Rosso. He was my brother." "That's not true," I shouted. "I don't believe you. Listen, Jake Rosso was my favourite singer. I had hundreds of photos of him. I still have all his records. I loved him. Do you understand? Thousands of people loved him." "He's dead," Mr. Ross said quietly. "No!" I shouted. "You're Jake Rosso. You look different now, yes. You've got short hair. You've got a moustache now, and you wear glasses. But you're Jake Rosso. You were my favourite pop star, so I know." Mr. Ross said nothing and watched my face. He doesn't know what to do, I thought. He knows I don't believe him, and he's afraid. Then he said, "It was you in the passage last night, wasn't it?" "Yes," I answered. He looked angry. "I was wrong to give your mother a job," he said. "I thought it was okay because you came from Hong Kong, and I needed help with my work. I needed a good secretary." "Does your other secretary know who you are?" I asked. "Do the other people on the island know?" Mr. Ross didn't answer, but walked across to the window. He was thinking. What's he going to do? I thought. Then he turned round. "Okay, you're right. I am Jake Rosso." "I knew it!" He looked worried and unhappy. "Can you keep a secret? A very important secret?" I thought for a minute, then I said, "Yes, I can keep a secret." Then he told me. The other people on this island are my family. Your family? I said. Yes. My real name is James Duncan, and Mr. and Mrs. Duncan are my father and mother. Tony is my younger brother, and his wife Lisa is my secretary. It's she who's in hospital. And Dan and Stella Parks? I asked. My mother's sister and her husband, he said. But what are you doing here on this island? I don't understand. I'll tell you, he said. He sat down on a chair and took a guitar in his hands, but he didn't play it. You were right. I was a famous pop star. I was very rich, and I had a beautiful wife. But things went wrong. How? I took drugs, he said. I drank a lot of alcohol. I got drunk and crashed cars. I did stupid, terrible things. I knew it was wrong, but I couldn't stop doing it. I was crazy for a time. I can understand that, I told him. I've taken drugs too. He looked surprised. You have? Yes, I said. After my father died, I was very unhappy, and things went wrong for me too. But go on with your story. He went on. One night, I was driving my car. I was drunk. And I hit somebody. A young girl. She died. I killed her. Oh, no. Yes, he said. She was 15 years old. I wanted to die too. The money didn't matter anymore. Nothing mattered anymore. What did you do after the accident? I asked. I drove on in the car. I didn't stop, and I didn't tell the police. I had killed someone, and I was afraid. He looked afraid now. He put the guitar down and went on with his story. So I made a plan. Jake Rosso had to die too. It was the best thing to do. And so I killed him. But you're still alive. My family know I'm alive, but no other people know. He looked at me. But now you know. How did you do it? I asked. I told my family about my plan, and I told Greta, my wife. At first they didn't like it, but after a long time, they said okay. Then I faked the car crash. Faked it? Yes, he said. I put some of my things in the car, a guitar and some clothes. Then I pushed my car over a cliff and burned it. The police found the burned car and thought I was dead. Everybody thought I was killed in the car crash. But you faked the crash, I said. Yes. What did you do then? My family hid me away for months. I tried to change into a different person. Shorter hair, a moustache, quiet suits. All my money went to Greta, and she changed her name to Ross. I told her to buy this island. Now I invest her money, the money that was mine. And now I'm James Ross. What about Jake Rosso? I asked. Jake Rosso took drugs, he said. Jake Rosso got drunk and crashed cars. He killed a young girl, so he had to die. I can never forget the girl. I think about her every day. And that's why you always look so sad, I thought. I looked around the room. Why do you keep a room like this? Why do you keep the guitars, the posters and photographs? James Ross did not speak for a minute. Then he said, I need to remember my old life and what Jake Rosso was like. I'm never going to sing again, and I'm never going to take drugs. But I need this room to remember. I looked at the posters and the photographs, and I looked at his sad face. I'm not going to say anything. I won't tell my mother. I won't tell anybody. James Ross looked at me. I think you understand, he said. I do, I said. I've done bad things. I want to forget them too. I needed to get away, to hide too. That's why we came to England, to begin a new life. Yes, I understand. He took my hand, and we walked out of the room and closed the door. I never went into the room again, and I didn't tell anybody. My mother and I left the island at the end of the summer. Soon after, I went to college. My life is better now. I work on a farm in England, and my mother works in an office. My mother doesn't worry about me because I'm happier now. I haven't been back to the island, but I know there's a dead man living there.